And happy Wednesday to everybody out there. Welcome to the Seahawks. Thursday for Ross. Ross is back with us, back from the sick or the bronchial or the dead, however severe it was.
The consumption.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good. But happy Streamcast Day to everyone. Thank you for anyone tuning in live. Also, thank you as always to Ross, who's back with us, and Zeb and Ross. I'm Sam. Welcome to the Seahawks FanTable. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone.
So, Seahawks. I'm super excited because Seahawks are 4-1. They are leading the NFC West. They've got a 2-game lead. They look pretty legit. There's definitely some opportunities here. But first off, let's talk about this game. It was pretty crazy. We'll go into a little bit more detail about it, but what were your guys' quick thoughts? There was a big penalty. There was a non-call. There was another non-call. There was a huge third quarter. There was domination for the 3 other quarters. What were you guys thinking when you were watching this game?
Well, I had a good time watching it overall, for the most part. I enjoyed myself. I liked what I saw, other than that brief third quarter little meltdown. But otherwise, yeah, I wasn't too worried. I thought I expected to win, and even when we were down there at that point, I still had faith that we were going to score some points and finish out on top.
What about you, Russ? What did you think?
Usually I'm pretty positive. Russell Wilson's taught me to never give up hope, no matter how far we're back down. I always assume we're going to come back. But this game, I thought a prediction of mine was going to come true. The long snapper didn't have a great game, and it cost us a couple points. And I thought we were going to lose because of that. And I think I even mailed you, Sam, about that. Like, oh my God, I told you we're going to lose a game because of the long snapper. So I admit I lost hope at one point because it just looked like that's what was going to happen. But it was an enjoyable game. I tried to be really positive. That first half, shutting down the Falcons to 86 yards and a half, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it was one of those things that, this is going to be our first topic, but whenever you have a number one of anything go against the number one of the opposing, that's always a really, really big topic. You had 2 front runners in their division, and I think this, it played out probably not the way that people would have liked it. If you were going to script it from an NFL perspective, you would have liked to have seen those points from the Falcons distributed outside of just the third quarter, because there probably were a couple of people that probably tuned out after that first half because it was a 17-3 game. There wasn't a lot of happening on their side. It looked like Seattle, when they wanted to move the ball, they could kind of do it so freely. So I think if you kind of just looked at the highlights, you would be more shocked to see what actually transpired during the course of the game. But what was really unique for this experience, for this game, I didn't have tickets to this game. I split it with one of my friends, Dustin Brown. He was on the podcast last week. But so I was watching this game at home, and I actually watched it with my wife. And then my kids woke up, and they joined us for the last quarter and a half. So it's a really interesting experience for me to watch it with people who I don't consider to be really, really big Seahawks fans. But it was still a really fun experience. The whole time my butt was clenched. I mean, you could have made a diamond out of there if you gave me a piece of coal. So that was my experience watching that game.
Yeah. It definitely had that butt clenching feeling there in the second half. I can understand that.
And what was so funny is we talked about Julio. We talked about Quintorez Jones, how much of a factor he was going to be in this game. And, sure enough, it ended up being a really big thing, and he had a bunch of contributions. Matt Ryan, he did a lot more than I thought he was going to, especially in that third quarter. But it was a really, really interesting game to see the Seahawks and how they kind of struggled defensively, but still yet come back.
Yeah.
Would you say they struggled defensively on the whole? Or would you say there was 2 plays that give the illusion, 2 or 3 plays maybe that give the illusion of a meltdown?
Well, let's talk.
number one offense in the league, right? And they had 86 yards in the first half. That's half the game right there. At halftime, 86 yards.
Well, let's talk about that. That's topic number one. It's number one offense versus number one defense. At the time, this might even be current, but the Falcons were averaging over 440 yards a game. Seahawks defense was allowing 383 yards a game. So that's a huge gap between these two offense/defense. That's over 160 yards. Essentially, the Falcons are averaging a game and a half if you were to take what they're doing on average versus what the Seattle defense is giving up. So this is a really, really, huge dynamic, and it leads to kind of the ongoing topic that defense wins championships. Zeb, I'm gonna let you lead this off. What was your take about this number one offense versus this number one defense?
Well, being the number one defense pretty regularly over the last 3 or 4 years, this isn't the first time we've been involved in this type of scenario. And I think we've kind of proven over the years that the old mantra is true. A great defense is probably better than a great offense. And we haven't had many offenses be able to kind of have their way with us since we've been sporting this Legion of Boom, this great defense. So, and Matt Ryan was able to have some success against us, particularly in that third quarter. And we kind of all expected them to be able to move the ball and score some points. But I think that overall, like Ross said, you take out a couple of blown coverages on a couple of plays, and this game's not even really close. I think once again, we've proven that a great defense is more valuable than a great offense.
So if you're a boxing promoter, if you're the Don King of the NFL, and you've got the number one offense, the number one defense, Ross, we didn't get to talk to you last week, but what was the storyline that you were looking for, and how do you think that plays out in this game?
I mean, the obvious one, of course, is the Richard Sherman versus Julio Jones, which is, everybody likes it, everybody simplifies it, but it's not that simplified because the Seahawks don't do straight man coverage, and there's some complicated zones, and of course Cam Chancellor ended up being a late scratch. But that's, really, what I was looking into it. I also wanted to see, Matt Ryan wants to take some shots, which means he's going to have to go back, 7-step drops, and I wanted to see if we could put some pressure on there. They had 4 sacks, I think, but that were also missing Michael Bennett from the third quarter on because of I think a cheap hit. They didn't have Frank Clark, so even missing the 2 pass rushers overall, they still had 3 sacks first half, 1 in the second half. I was really looking at that kind of thing. I don't think there's a lot to take away the opposite way. I don't think our offense is what our offense is going to be, so I'm not too worried about it. Once Wilson's properly healthy, once we have full complement of everybody back, it's going to look a little different. I was just really interested in how our line matched up on this and how we could take care of the receivers, which I thought overall, take out a couple plays, I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, the thing that I found to be most interesting is they were talking about how they had 2 running backs, in Freeman and Coleman, who were these big threats, how these guys catch the ball out of the backfield, how they're going to run on a screen pass, how they're going to run on a flat play, how they're going to, streak in the slot, how they're going to do all these things. And they were almost 99% a non-factor in this game.
No, totally.
I know they were there. I know in the first half, Seattle blitzed more than they had any other game. In the 20-plus games that Chris Richard has been the offensive coordinator, that was the highest percentage of rushes when they sent 5 or more guys. And you would think that a team that had such a prolific offense would be able to say, okay, well, you beat the rush, you're not draw play, or you beat the rush, you throw a screen play. And you didn't see any of that. There was no bubble screens that were effective. There was no draw plays. Every running play, I don't think they had their, really great run play until, the third quarter or fourth quarter, and that was, a 15-yard gain. So
right.
It was really surprising to me to see how well the defense played. Yes, we can talk about those two touchdowns, but for the most part, you know, Ross, you're kind of right. I mean, you look at the sum of the parts. That was mostly a very dominant game by the defense because they only allowed points, 3 in the first half, and then 3 touchdowns in 1 quarter. Right?
Yeah, 52 yards rushing for Atlanta. Coleman had 2 yards of carry, I think. I think he had 10 yards. Freeman had something like 40 yards. I mean, they didn't average anywhere near 4 yards of carry. They gave up the run essentially. So, when you take away one whole area, I don't think they were really prepared for how fast Seattle's defense. You're talking about they didn't deal with the blitz very well. I think they wanted to. They looked for the blitzer through in that direction. I just don't think they were really prepared for how fast Seattle's defense is. Because fast on film is one thing, fast on the field is another. And they just didn't look prepared for it in the first half.
So is that a factor of crowd noise? I mean, we've all been to games. Seattle's known for its crowd, but is that an impact where Matt Ryan hasn't been in Seattle in, I think, 8+ years? I can't remember the last time Atlanta was actually in Seattle. Is that a factor? Because the prediction before the game was this huge, crazy storm. It fizzled out. It was just rain and some wind, pretty light weather. But the crowd, there are a lot of people talking about how big the crowd was. The announcers talking about how loud the crowd was. It doesn't lead to false starts anymore. But that protection, the center calling out a play, calling out, hey, you're in charge of this guy, does that fall through in a game like this? Because you can't account for it.
Yeah, I mean, it could a little bit. I'm sure, it's hard to say without getting into some specifics about, whether the calls being made were heard or if that's what caused some of the lapses in protection. But it's been seen that the crowd noise does have an effect sometimes. So I guess it's totally possible.
Yeah. Russ, any more thoughts about number one versus number one?
I think as far as the crowd noise goes, it's hard to really say these days. I don't think the intensity is quite there as much as it used to be, and I think more than that, teams do a lot better job in preparing for it. It doesn't catch anybody by surprise anymore, of course. And I think teams have had a few years now to kind of develop systems. There's a couple other teams that are arguably as loud or very close. So people get more exposure to it, even if they haven't played in Seattle. Like Kansas City's like this, Minnesota's going to be like this now. I just don't think that's going to be as much of a factor going forward, but who knows? I mean, maybe it is with individuals, maybe not the whole team. So it's hard to say.
Yeah. All right, well, let's move on to topic 2, because this is where it gets really interesting. Seahawks have given up, quote-unquote, easy touchdowns in the past 3 games. All in the second half, you have the 49ers converting a short field and driving down the field, running down the ball, scoring 2 touchdowns. Carlos Hyde's the first guy to get 100 yards in a very long time against a Seattle defense. You have the fluky fumble return for a touchdown at like the 2-minute and 15-second mark in that game against the Jets, which was otherwise a pretty dominant performance. And then you have this third quarter where if you go back and look at the play, it's 2 blown coverages, and then it's a nice underneath route to Mohamed Sanu, who gets a touchdown. Ross, I want you to lead off. Does the Seahawks get exposed? Is this an example of Dan Quinn working with his offensive coordinator to exploit? Is it an issue with the defense? Is it a missing Cam Chancellor? What do you think happened that led to these easy points in the second half? Because they've been talked about, they've been concerns, and yet here we are, 3 games in a row.
I don't think it's a pattern. I think it looks like a pattern, but I think it's a random thing. I don't think they're exposed. I don't think anything of the other long touchdowns have anything to do with these. The guy who caught the 46-yard touchdown, Toilolo.
Yeah, Toilolo.
I mean, it's not like that guy blew us off, or we just had no answer for him or anything like that. There's nothing to expose there. Whoever was supposed to guard him, and it could have been anybody. Let's be honest. That guy's not like a receiving master. Nobody picked it up, and that's not something you can call the similar play and it'll happen again. If Cam Chancellor's back there, that doesn't happen. If you call the same play next week, it's not going to happen. They'll learn from it. So it's not really exposed. It's a mistake. they exploited a mistake, and that's what good teams do. So you don't take anything away from Atlanta. I don't say like, hey, we blew it more than they earned it. They saw the blown coverage, they took advantage of it. All the credit to them, but they didn't expose anything. The long touchdown to Julio Jones, same thing. You can see clearly from Sherman's reaction, he wasn't surprised by the play. It should have been taken care of.
Yeah.
So I don't think anything's really exposed there. You see the other long touchdowns in the other games. It's kind of, I think it's a bit of to get literature. It's a bit of like the Guns of August thing. A few small decisions get made. By coincidence, they kind of follow the same pattern. So an outside observer takes it to look like a real legitimate pattern that means something, but in fact, it's not. Doesn't signal anything. It's just coincidences.
Yeah.
From my point of view.
Zeb, what do you think watching this game?
Well, I think I don't think anything's been exposed necessarily. I do feel like under Chris Richard, this defense has been a little bit more prone to give up the big play than they were under Dan Quinn. But at the same time, as good as this defense has been, it still has given up big plays here and there. So I guess maybe the fact that we've had, like you called them, easy scores kind of come in a bunch could make it feel like something's wrong, but I'm going to need to see more and something that feels less fluky before I'm willing to say that, yeah, there's a problem. We need to make some changes now. So, yeah, I would not say that anything's been exposed at this point, although I'm sure, nobody knows this defense better than Dan Quinn. So it's possible that he was able to find some seams, to find some wrinkles and take advantage of them. But I don't. Long term, bigger picture, I don't think anything's been exposed.
Have you guys had a chance to check out any video about those 2 touchdown plays, because they're really identical? And if you recall, what happens is they essentially have a guy lined out just maybe 5-7 yards away from the tackle, and Sherman's playing that guy inside. There's no one else playing coverage beyond that, down the sideline. And then all of a sudden they motion someone. So in the first play, Julio's lined up in what's a slot position, but he's not covered. So it's just, he's just lined up close. And then they run the tight end or wide receiver further out, and Sherman rotates over, follows him through, and then basically Julio's now in the slot position. They did the exact same thing, except the difference was they had the tight end line up close to the tackle, and then they motioned Julio out. Both times, Richard Sherman follows the guy moving outside, and then Richard Sherman changes to a man position. And then what happens is, it looks like Earl Thomas is a single high safety, and then they have another linebacker, a corner, or a safety also playing kind of underneath, but then that person doesn't follow deep. And I think it was really interesting to see that they had that same play happen again, and it reminded me a lot of what happened last year with Tyler Eifert when Seattle was playing in Cincinnati, and it happened again when Carolina came to Seattle and Greg Olsen, got this open touchdown. So I agree with you guys that it's not necessarily exposure, but it seems like under Chris Richard there are these mental lapses. Is it a new player like Kelsey McRae? Is it the omission of a Cam Chancellor because he's not here? But these are something that we are seeing more frequently. Like, I can't recall the last time where Seattle was burned so deeply pre-Chris Richard. The closest thing I can think of, I don't know if you guys remember this, but I think it was in Seattle's first year or second year, we played against the Colts, and the Colts just kind of ran T.Y. Hilton deep, and we kept getting burnt deep. Do you guys remember that?
I mean, the Seahawks have had problems with the tight end the last couple of years, I think, running maybe 3 or 4 years running down the seam especially.
Yeah, but I mean, the two touchdowns with Julio and with the tight end, I feel were very reminiscent of the times that we've seen that tight end kind of release free and go deep. And my concern is, it's not exposure, but it's a repeat occurrence, And
but I think what it points to is that Chris Richard has had to put, I mean, the defense is deceptively simple. Like, it looks really, really simple. And I think it was, I want to say Deshaun Shedd, but I don't think it was him. One of the DBs who came in this year, so it wasn't Deshaun Shedd. Who was it? I forget. They came in and they said, when you look at the defense at first, it looks really, really simple. But there's many, 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 many subtle wrinkles to it. And I think I assume Chris Richard's actually put more wrinkles into it, even small changes, small, when you see this, that changes your responsibility. You do this, you should now do this. I think they've had to, because you have to stay ahead of the offenses. And I think maybe it's getting a bit more complex. And so maybe that has a tendency when a new player's in there who's not out there every week, maybe there's more of a tendency for there to be a mess up. I don't really think it's a weakness, though. I think it's something just kind of a function of how it has to be. You can't keep the exact same defense. It has to have new wrinkles. It has to have how you react to changes has to change. Otherwise, you're going to be exploited, and you'll be exposed for real. I'd rather give up one or two plays every quarter season than have a defense that ends up being exposed permanently.
Right. Zeb, any final thoughts about Seahawks and these touchdowns?
I don't know. I'm not concerned at this point. I feel like under Richard there has been some communication lapses, or at least that's how it appears to me. So to see that now and again, it's disappointing. Because we want this to be that historically good defense. But that, whatever, this kind of stuff, it's going to happen now and again. So until we see something detrimental, I'm not too concerned about it.
Yeah. My final thoughts about this is, one, I think that these big plays are happening too frequently, which obviously I feel is a concern. But the one positive that I want to say out of this game is that the Seahawks blitzed, and they blitzed effectively. I think it's really easy for a lot of people to say, like, oh yeah, well, we'll just keep sending more guys at the quarterback and they won't be able to stop you. That's not true. I think anyone understands, whether you've played football or played Madden or watched enough football, blitzing exposes you, and there are certain ways that you have to kind of prepare yourself. You have to be able to say, we have to get home in this many seconds, otherwise we're going to have too many guys that we can't cover. And I think Chris Richard did a really, really great job with that in this game, and the players executed really well. So that's something that I want to call out with that number one defense, how they played against the number one offense, because all I remember hearing leading up to this game was, don't blitz Matt Ryan, don't blitz Matt Ryan. He's got a 137 quarterback rating when you blitz him. But I think the Seahawks did so much at taking away his outlets, taking away his first look, taking away his security blankets and his running backs, that they won that battle so many times, and I think he ended up with like a sub-70 quarterback rating when it came to when the Seahawks blitzed him, which I want to say is a really commendable thing. I was really surprised to see that, because we don't see Seahawks blitz a lot. They stay in that base 4 and they just rush 4 passes at him, right?
Now we blitzed as well as I can remember seeing us blitz in this last game, so it was definitely good to see. That whole first half, that defense was just phenomenal.
And it's not even just about like the number of sacks they had. They hit Matt Ryan so many times.
Yeah, they knocked him around. He was on the ground like 11 or 12 times.
Yeah,
I didn't think he was going to finish the game. I didn't. I thought like eventually one of these, at the end of the first half, especially when they were really getting to it, I thought like eventually one of these is going to get him wrong, and he's going to end up on his shoulder wrong, and he's going to be done for the day. But he stuck through it.
Yeah. So kudos to Chris Richard. Kudos to the defense. But the one thing we got to talk about with Chris Richard is topic number 3. Mount Sherman erupts. The Legion of Boom and the defense rallies around him. I've never seen this happen in a Pete Carroll team, where you have a very marquee player on offense or defense do anything like this. The closest thing that I can remember is Marshawn Lynch flicking off Darrell Bevel on the sideline because they run like a draw play to the quarterback instead of letting him run up the gut. So it was really interesting, and I didn't know what to make of it, because all you see on the TV broadcast is just Sherman yelling, and you see a couple guys that kind of like trying to talk him down, and then all of a sudden you see them all just like in Sherman's face, just jumping, screaming, hollering, laughing, and then they go out and play a great fourth quarter. Zeb, you watched this at home too. What did you see? What did you think when you saw this?
Well, I was scared and confused.
You're scared for your safety?
Honestly, though, it was really disconcerting to see Richard as mad as he was. See him that angry. Especially because, at this point, we didn't really see what happened. Like, we saw the lapse in coverage and the touchdown. But we didn't see. It was hard to understand exactly what he was angry, who he was angry at, what he was angry about. But clearly he was pissed. So, we're trying to figure out what's going on. And I kind of had formed this little quick hypothesis in my head that he was mad at Cam for not playing.
Yeah.
Like I had like this feeling that he was like yelling at Cam, like, you should be out here with us. Like, this is bullshit.
Yeah, because he was the first guy that you really see like in his face, and he's like yelling. Cam's just kind of taking it.
Yeah, exactly. So I had thought that maybe it was something like that. But then it was cool. It was weird, and it was cool to see the way the whole defense kind of just like, we're like, we get it, bro, but like, here, let's get back, let's get our heads together, let's get back in the game, and see them rally like that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Ross, what you see when you were watching this?
I thought it was like the most Pete Carroll Seattle Seahawks thing I'd ever seen. I mean, he doesn't trample on people. So like Sherman goes off, and 4-5 players try to calm him down. None of them are Pete Carroll. Like, he doesn't walk over. He just lets it happen. You see him. He keeps an eye on it. He's interested, but he's gonna let Sherman be Sherman. And like Zeb said, man, does anybody have an angrier face when they're angry than Richard Sherman?
No.
Like, when he's mad, I mean, I was scared he was going to hit me. Like, I'm in Tokyo.
That was reminiscent of the NFC Championship game against the Niners, where he's like screaming on the microphone.
His angry face is the scariest face. I mean, jeez. So, I don't blame some people maybe for not trying to calm him down, but then anyway, so 4 or 5 players try to calm him down. He doesn't. And then they do almost like the before the game kind of chant, and they're all around him. They're jumping up and down, and I thought that was awesome. Like, the team's coming together for it. I mean, actually, in honesty, it has no effect at all, right? Like, he has none of it. He turns away, he walks away. He doesn't actually do anything.
No,
but
and
the fact that the team isn't going to give up on him. The team's not intimidated. The team knows that he's just going to be him, and he's got to let it out. But they're still, they're going to have a demonstration of some team unity there. I thought that was pretty amazing. I've never seen that done, and I've been watching sports for over 30 years, so I had chills after I was calmed down that I was sure that Richard wasn't going to hit me.
Yeah,
that was a scary, scary face, man.
And we might not have that scary face that Richard Sherman has, but we've all maybe been in a similar situation where, for whatever reason, we've just lost our cool. Regardless of how your temperament runs, you're just like steaming. And no matter what anyone says, it's just adding more fuel to the fire. And that's what I saw with Sherman. Like, no matter which guy, whether it was Cam Chancellor, whether it's Earl Thomas, whether it's Bobby Wagner, whether it's Michael Bennett. I mean, these are like equally high-profile players on that defense, all telling him to chill. And he's like having none of it.
Like, when Earl Thomas is telling you to chill, like, you've probably crossed the line.
Earl Thomas, by the way, best game of the season by far, correct?
Yeah.
He balled.
Yeah, for sure. But it was really interesting to see, and I honestly didn't know what to make of it, because you never see that. Through all the mishaps, through all the defensive lapses that we saw last year against the Cincinnati Bengals, against the Carolina Panthers, all the times that they owned a fourth quarter lead and still gave it up, you never saw that, which is kind of like the eternal Pete Carroll team that I think we've all grown accustomed to. This was a new facet. This was a new way to see the team. And for it to be captured on TV for everyone to look at and dissect and infer, I thought it was incredible. Because... Go ahead.
I was going to say, that tells me, though, that it really, really was... I mean, we talked about this off mic earlier. That shows me that it was really, really personal with him. I mean, The other things were always team breaking down and things like that. I really thought this is something he had warned Chris Richard about, and then it happened. And that's what really had him going, that he kind of had foresaw it all week long. He talked about it. And the team has so much pride in, like, it's not the record for them. I don't think they really care 4 or 5, how many years in a row they have the number one defense. They care about every point they give up. It's a point of pride with them. And so when he knew that this would happen, and then it happened, and he'd gone into, I told you so, the frustration just, I think, was too much for him. He had probably told them, if they do this, is what's going to happen, because he's not going to make the signal or whatever, and the coverage is going to get blown. And then he, watched it happen exactly as he predicted, and so he couldn't control it.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen the video, there's I believe it's on NFL Mic'd Up. They show Richard Sherman coming to the sideline, and they show Chris Richard. They are barking at each other, and you don't see that. You don't see a guy walking to his defensive coordinator, and the defensive coordinator equally mouthing off at both of them, and you see guys basically pushing Sherman away from Chris Richard. And I think that really alludes to what you're talking about, Ross, where this was something where he is so cerebral, he is so sure of himself. I don't put blame on Sherman on those touchdowns. I know it looks like it's his responsibility because he's the outside guy, and it's a deep route in the corner. But I've watched the replay, and I feel that there was something that was missing. And what was kind of alluded to is Richard Sherman says in his press conference that, it's fine. There's a couple things that were implemented late in the week, probably due to Cam Chancellor's absence. And he called Kelsey McCray and said, he's new to the team. He didn't say that he messed up. He didn't say that he did anything wrong. But there's enough inference there that you can kind of say, like, look, he needed to have done something and he failed to do that. Whether it was a signal, whether it was something there, I see that as the spark that would have made Mount Sherman erupt. The fact that Kelsey McCray didn't say, like, hey, we're now changing the defense. You're following third deep. I'm staying short zone. And that lack of communication, because Kelsey McCray is not a long-time member of that defense, I could see that having a huge impact in the way that Sherman and that defense would take personal responsibility about how an offense scores on them.
I think if anybody at this point has made the mistake of believing that that Sherman maybe has lost some of his passion for the game, I think they were put in their place this weekend.
I would have to say that's one of the most impressive things about this team, is because you always hear about, like, oh, that guy got paid, he's packing in. And these guys aren't playing like, oh, I got my paycheck, I'm good. No, like Michael Bennett is a great example. Michael Bennett's been complaining for 2 years, rightfully so, that he's underpaid, and yet he continues to have career year after career year. I think that's something I find to be really impressive about this defense, the way they rallied around Richard Sherman. That means something to him. Maybe in the game he will never be able to recognize that, but after the game, when they're in those team meetings that are occurring this week, that's a big talking point. And if I'm a coach, if I'm a manager, if I'm in charge of these people, I would show that clip. I would just have that play for like 5 minutes, and that would be like my team meeting, because it was such an interesting, such a cool thing to see. That is so rare and something that you have so much access to. So I thought it was a cool thing. I loved all aspects of it, outside of the fact that we gave up touchdowns.
Well, since you brought up Bennett, just I guess as an aside, what we have any word on the status of his injury?
Yeah, so after, like, right away in the press conference, he said that I'm going to be fine. Like, I think it was probably like a stinger or something that they were just wanted to be, like, careful about. But I think in the press conference with Pete, he said that, Bennett should be good to go. I think he's been maybe limited in practice, but he's looking like he's going to play. What was really...
I'm pretty sure there's structural damage in there, but it's damage they think he can play through. You're not going to be surprised when it comes to February and he has off-season surgery, right?
Yeah.
But this is what it is. I mean, it's just something that he's going to play through.
Did you see the hit?
I did. I mean, like, it seems like Michael Bennett has a crosshair on him, right? This is 2 games in a row. Somebody's taking a pretty cheap shot.
Well, he called out the lineman that did it, and I looked at the play, and he called it a bitch move. He said, "Play me man up," and I know a lot of people, especially Falcons fans, are saying They hit Michael Bennett hit Matt Ryan late. Michael Bennett kept hitting him late. But at some point, you as an offensive lineman can't allow your quarterback to get that many hits. I know Matt Ryan has like the lead in hits since he's been playing for the past few years, which is kind of crazy to think. But you compare to what you saw with Seattle and Russell Wilson played a really clean game. Like that offensive lineman, as shoddy as it is, they did enough so that he wasn't just taking punishment play after play.
Well, exactly. If you don't want your quarterback to take so many hits, then do your job. You don't want somebody to run up the score on you, then do your job. You don't want somebody to hit your quarterback, do your job. Don't take a cheap shot later so that guy's out so he can't hit him. Play by the rules.
Yeah.
Play a clean game.
And
this isn't just a game. This is their job. It's for their profession. You get somebody on the knee like that, that could really do some serious damage.
Yeah.
Well, not that this is an excuse, but Michael Bennett and his brother as well. They both seem to be like the kind of guys that are pretty good at getting under people's skin.
Yeah, that's true.
I think this isn't an excuse. This isn't saying that anybody is right to do that to him, but I think he kind of inspires that anger, and he gets people to that point where they're willing to, try to sneak something in here and there.
Yeah, the Jets lineman tried to send a message and he concussed himself. I mean, how bad is that?
That was excellent.
Yeah. Any final comments about the defense, about these touchdowns, about the matchup between Sherman and Julio that you guys want to close off with?
I'm glad it's over.
Who's the next marquee wide receiver that we're going to face?
Fitzgerald, yeah.
Larry. Yeah.
Larry.
We'll talk about him more later.
We got
Larry
Gronk coming up.
Larry Fitzgerald is a Hall of Famer for sure. I don't think he's a big threat to Seattle, but we'll get to that. But yeah, Gronk's down the road. Tight end's a little bit of a different monster, so it'll be interesting to see how healthy we are for sure.
Yeah.
But let's take a step back. Let's talk about it nationally. Topic number 4. Seahawks right now are ranked between 3 and 5 in almost every power ranking. Is it too early to talk about what this team can be, not just what it is? I mean, we are all fans. We all want them to do well. But at some point, there's enough footage, there's enough demonstration of their capabilities that they can go far. Now, they haven't played the strongest opponents, for sure. The only winning team that they're facing right now have been the Rams, who are 3-3, I believe. And then you also have the Falcons, who are now 4-2, who the Seahawks just beat. Where do you guys look at this? So, Ross, I'm going to hand it off to you. Power rankings don't mean a whole lot, but what it is awareness of how good this team potentially can be, not just now, but where they are at the end of the season.
Well, I think it's interesting. They haven't played a remarkably great football up to now, but they're still 4-1. They've had some, severe injuries to key players, and they're still 4-1. Now, we were supposed to be able to handle Lynch being gone because we have Rawls, but we don't have Rawls. We have Christian Michael, who was cut by 3 teams last year, but we're 4-1. I think this is a lot about us. I think this could be. It's starting to feel special. At the beginning of the year, we're just kind of like, can we hang on with this offensive line? Can we survive? Can we sneak in the playoffs? Maybe. But 4-1, and some teams seem to be falling off, and I think it's starting to feel like we could we could go far in the playoffs anyway. I hate to look that far ahead, but I can't help it, and then I'm just a fan, so it's okay, isn't it? You start looking at those rankings, you start to get a little full of yourself, but you watch Carolina just fall off the map, and Arizona's not what we thought they were going to be, and so you start thinking, hey, should I start looking at hotels wherever the Super Bowl is going to be played this year?
That's pretty early.
Yeah, I know, but you got to get those seats in early, and 4-1, buddy, 4-1.
Zeb, what are your thoughts on power ranking?
At some point, Rawls is going to come back, and I think that's going to help our running game, because I don't think Christian Michael's the kind of guy who's going to make a lot of positive yards with this kind of offensive line. I don't think Christian Michael's a bad guy. He's a good runner, but against when it's not preseason, when we're playing the full-time starters, he's a 3.5 yards per carry kind of guy behind our line. Whereas I think Rawls has a different type of running style, and I think is a little transcendent, and I think he can be closer to what Lynch could get, but in a different way, that 2 or 3, 4 yards after the initial contact. So he's going to get better. Russell Wilson's going to get healthier, right? It looks really good, doesn't it?
Yeah. Really quickly to that point about Christine Michael, that's probably, I think, my biggest concern about him right now is that in the system, I think he plays really well. He scored 2 touchdowns in the game Sunday. He didn't have the greatest average, but he had one great cut and go. But in the fourth quarter, when I think it was it was late third or it was early fourth quarter, and we're moving down the field, and we basically need 2 yards or 1 yard on third down. He tries to run up the gut. He gets stuck. He's able to cut it up, but then instead of cutting to the outside, he just continues to run straight, and then he always seems to kind of fall dive, but he fall dives always short of the yardage. Ends up being 4th and inches. They elect to punt, and we lose kind of that momentum because Christian Michael just doesn't have that finishing capacity, and I know that's not fair to ask it of him because he really is a backup. He's the change of pace guy, but that's what Seattle is missing, and I think if that's what Thomas Rawls brings, that'll be great. If Alex Collins grows into that, because that touchdown run that he had, I know people still aren't on the Alex Collins bandwagon, but he had 2 amazing plays. He had that nice sidestep when he was chased down by the defensive tackle, and he sidestepped him and plowed in for the touchdown. He had great pass protection on that final drive that got us a field goal, turned into a 9-yard gain that converted for a first down. Big props to him. If that's the kind of stuff that he contributes, that's going to be amazing.
Sam is a fan now.
You know what? I told him I thought it was going to be cut in the preseason.
Don't pick him up on your fantasy team yet, man.
I'm not going to pick him up on my fantasy team quite yet. He did score a touchdown though, but I was impressed with him, and that was in the 2 plays that I saw him play in. I was very impressed, and I thought it doesn't have to be a touchdown. It doesn't have to be a big third down conversion. But if that's the kind of plays that we can see from you, where you're getting the yards you need, where you can make an impactful play, that's promising. And if that's just the floor and the ceiling's way, way away, I think that's pretty cool. Zeb, what's your take on this? Sorry.
Which part?
Let's talk about power rankings. Let's see if you want to book tickets to the Super Bowl.
Yes, I have my tickets. I have my seats picked out. I'm ready to go.
Wait, let's go.
I think that based on the teams we've played and the way we've played, I think a top 5 ranking might be a bit high. But when you look at the outcome of those games, the 4-1 record, and this team's tendency to get hotter as the year goes on, I think at that point a top 5 ranking is probably just about right. So yeah, I mean, obviously, just as a fan, I'd love to see us sitting up atop of the rankings. That's fun. That's all. It always feels good. But we got a lot of football to play, and we got some good teams we're going to have to beat. We're going to have to go into New England and go into Green Bay, go into New Orleans. We got some pretty tough games ahead of us. So, as it stands right now, sitting at 4-1, playing the football that we're playing at this point, I'll take a top 5 ranking for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of about the same with you, Zeb. I'm not ready to say they're a top 3 NFL team. I think that because a lot of the teams that Seattle's going to play down the stretch have panned out not to be as good. Arizona, I think, is a question mark even at 3-3. Carolina at 1-5 looks like they're toast. I mean, their quarterback can't even beat a terrible New Orleans defense, even after he's down 21 points, which is, credit to him, but he can't handle the losing, and I get it. You look at the other teams that Seattle's going to play. They're going to play at Green Bay. Green Bay does not look like a powerhouse team. They don't have a running game. Aaron Rodgers doesn't look like the Aaron Rodgers of old. You have a lot of these teams that are on Seattle's schedule that don't look to be like the imposing teams. One of the best teams that Seattle's going to play is going to be the 4-2 Buffalo Bills, and the 5-1 Patriots. Those are matching up to be the two biggest games at the end of this season, and I think that's kind of crazy. The Eagles have lost 2 in a row, and they haven't looked good in those losses. Most teams don't. This Atlanta win, I think, is huge and helps propel us above them and has us in a better priority. The one thing that I'm concerned about, and we talked about this last week when you and Dustin brought up the team, Zeb, you brought up the Dallas Cowboys, and we also talked about the Vikings.
Yep.
Those are the teams I see as the teams that are in front of us in the NFC. The Vikings, because they play the AFC South, that's potentially 4 easy wins for them. Dallas looks like Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott are a great rookie combo, probably one of the best rookie combos we've seen in a long time. I see them going far. I see them, if they maintain, even without the really strong defense, I think that it's a potentially really, really strong team, because that NFC East I don't think looks too scary right now. We thought they were going to be really good. Washington looks pretty solid. The Giants and the Eagles, I don't think they're as strong. That's going to be really interesting. Those are the 2 teams that I would put ahead of Seattle right now. And we'll see. I think it is too early to say that they are a contender. I know Football Outsiders gives them the number 2 shot to win a Super Bowl behind the Minnesota Vikings right now through week 6. That's exciting to me, but I'm not ready to book tickets. I'm not ready to look at flights. I'm going to keep him on my saved card. I'm going to keep him in my saved card. I'll do the solid. I'm going to keep tickets that are in the next airport over, and I'll go there and then drive to the city where the Super Bowl is in. That's the way I'm going to save my money.
I'll book a twin room. You can crash on the other bed.
I'll sleep on the couch wherever it is.
Where is the Super Bowl this year? I don't even know.
Nova Scotia? Or, Newfoundland?
That's actually a good question. Where is the Super Bowl this year?
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know.
Miami or some bullshit.
Yeah.
If we had an intern, they could look that up.
We'll work on that.
Right.
We're hiring for an intern. You can be our stat guy during the podcast.
Houston.
Houston. Oh, okay.
Houston, Texas.
I'm not going then. Never mind.
I will not be going to Houston.
I've been there.
All right. Well, let's talk about the next opponent. We've got the Arizona Cardinals. They started 1-3. People kind of cast them off, left for dead. They've won 2 in a row against some bad teams, against the Niners and the Jets, who Seattle has beat. And we're playing Sunday night. This is a really interesting matchup because this is a really important game for the Arizona Cardinals, not only because it's the divisional game, but they really need to get wins to kind of help propel them. Because if they lose, they almost have no shot at the division. They're looking at wild card, and they need more help from other teams. Zeb, what do you think about this matchup? We've got potentially a injured Carson Palmer. We've got linemen on their side that might not be healthy. You have Seattle, who's down a tight end, and Luke Wilson. You don't know the availability of a Cam Chancellor. You hope that Michael Bennett's available. You still don't know what your running game is going to look like. And the Arizona defense has actually played pretty well against the run. They're middle of the field when it comes to pass offense. But what are you looking for in this game from Seattle? What are you looking for in this game from Arizona?
Well, first off, I just want to say that I like to think that I'm pretty even-keeled. And I like to... I'm of the mentality that any given Sunday, anything can happen. I never chalk up something as a loss or as a victory beforehand, because I know there's too many variables. There's too many things that can happen. You can be the best team facing the worst team, and you could lose. That happens all the time. So rarely will I look at a schedule and say, that's a win for sure, or that's a loss for sure. The Cardinals don't scare me right now. And we've played them fairly well in recent years. So I fully expect to go into Arizona and handle them this weekend. I'm honestly not concerned. I think there's a good probability that we're going to knock Palmer out of the game. because I just look how we're hitting these quarterbacks right now, and he's just fragile. He's not going to be able to take it, and I'm not scared of Drew Stanton in that situation. So yeah, they have a outstanding running back, Johnson. They have good wide receivers. They have a strong defense. But there's just we play them well. We play them well in Arizona, particularly. So I'm not. This game does not concern me as much as maybe I don't know. Maybe it should. I don't know. But I'm very confident going into this week.
So here's a question then: were you more concerned about Atlanta coming to Seattle versus Seattle going to Arizona?
Yes.
You're more concerned about the Falcons game than you were about this game against the Cardinals?
I was, yeah. Because I really think that Falcons offense is one of the best, if not the best, going right now. And I think that they're looking to establish themselves as a top tier team at this point. So,
Yeah.
That worried me more. The Cardinals have been that borderline top tier team the last season or two, and it seems to me at this point that they are no longer. So as long as the team isn't, if we're not overlooking them, which I don't think we will be. I'm fairly confident going into this weekend.
It's Sunday night, baby. Seahawks always show up.
Well, right. Plus it's prime time.
All right, Ross, you've been to whatever they call their stadium, Phoenix University Online Stadium. You've seen the Seahawks play in Phoenix. You've seen them play against these Cardinals. What was the last game that you actually went to? Was it last year or 2 years?
Not last season, the year before that, end of the season.
Okay.
I think it was just before Christmas, I think. Do you know what their stadium looks like? Their stadium, it looks like, do you remember before there was microwave popcorn, there was like stovetop popcorn?
Yeah, with the metal tray.
The aluminum foil, and like the more it heats up, the more it looks like that just before you've like burst it. That's what it looks like. It looks like stovetop popcorn building, and it's good stuff there. But and the crowd's nice. I mean, it's mostly retired folks, isn't it? It's all Phoenix, so it's mostly retired folks, and they're not hardcore fans. They're really polite and nice, and that's why you can hear mostly Seahawks cheers throughout the game. It's a really interesting place to go to compared to like San Diego, Denver, Oakland, some of the other games I've been to, away games. It's just kind of it feels almost like a baseball game with the people there. Like they're just there to have a picnic. It's not intense.
They're here to just hang out in the beer garden, show up on TV.
They put their dentures in their little cups and they're relaxing, and then like they're talking about the game, and you have to keep correcting them because they don't know the name of their quarterback. Because they think it's still Jim Hart or somebody from the 80s. But it's cool people. It's a cool town. I'd go to there if it was a Super Bowl there again. I was actually there. The game I went to there practiced the halftime show of the Super Bowl that year. So yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Okay.
Anyway, for this game, I think the Cardinals have a bit of hubris. Teams take on obviously the personality of their coach. You see that everywhere. Seattle and San Francisco under Harbaugh, especially. And I think I know somebody who works for the Cardinals organization, and apparently their coach is actually quite a nice guy in real life. But his public persona and his football persona is, I think, very prideful and very full of hubris. And I think the team has done that, like all the way down. They haven't replaced some of the older people on the defense and the receiving core. And the quarterback, obviously, they never ever learn. They never have a good backup plan, even though almost every year Palmer gets hurt. And I just think that's it's catching after them. The D looks really, really good. All these guys were like all-stars, but they were all-stars in 2014 and 2013, and now we're 2016, and 3 years in football is a lifetime. That's a career for a lot of players. So I just think that it's just not scary anymore to me. And, they're probably going to lose now. I look like an idiot, but I love that. I mean, like, Atlanta was a lot scarier. Julio Jones is a scary guy. Matt Ryan, I mean, he's a nice guy, so you don't really get intimidated by him because he just looks like that guy who was your homecoming prince or whatever. homecoming king, but he can sling it. And Palmer has a stronger arm, but he's a statue. And like Zeb says, I'm afraid he's gonna break. So that's where I'm at.
I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup, and this is where I'm going to change not only my prediction for where the Seahawks end, but if they win this game, and if they win this game soundly, and that's I think the one thing we haven't really seen with the Seahawks yet. We haven't seen them just like dominate from quarter to quarter to quarter. We saw it in Atlanta where we dominated for 3 out of 4 quarters. We saw it in the Jets where we dominated for 2.5 out of 4 quarters. We saw it with the Niners where we dominated for half of the game and then we let some easy touchdowns, affect the score. I haven't seen a game where we just dominate front to end, and that's what I'm hoping the Cardinals are, because they've got a statue in Carson Palmer. He is notably down when it comes to his downfield passes. Their passing game is not as good as it needs to be. Their passing game was actually the best when they played against the Niners, and that was Drew Stanton slinging the ball. And I think that's kind of a indictment against Palmer, because
he doesn't look right.
He doesn't look right, and he was in the concussion protocol from the way that they played in Week 4. I forgot who banged him up. But that seems like a really bad recipe for Seattle, because that stadium's not loud. That defense is not going to be affected. The Seattle offense is not going to be affected by that crowd because it's so quiet. I remember, and we'll talk about this in the next topic, Seahawks travel really well to Arizona. They have such a big presence that you can hear Seahawk fans cheering in the game on a broadcast. It's insane. That's unheard of, to think that another team can cheer their own name in your own stadium. That's just embarrassing from a fan perspective. So I like the matchup. I like what Seattle does. If we're healthy on the defense with Michael Bennett, with Cam Chancellor, I'm very, very ecstatic, because I think we play well. We play well in the desert. We play well against Arizona in their stadium. And I think that we could crush them. We could do what we did to Jim Harbaugh's Niners 2 years ago and just crush their souls and just walk away as victors and say, this is ours now. Come and take it. And you're not going to. That's what I want to see. And I don't know if the offense is strong enough yet, because we haven't seen that consistency. But if there is a game to do it, and if they do it in this game, even though it's a strong rush defense versus our rush offense, I think there's a chance, because Russell Wilson plays really, really well in Phoenix. So I'm excited for this game.
I would like to see that exact scenario that you're talking about. I don't expect any kind of massacre or blowout, but you never know. The fact is, we haven't lost to the Cardinals in Arizona since Russell Wilson's first regular season game.
No, his first regular season game in 2012 is when they lost by less than a touchdown and they couldn't score from.
Yeah, we lost by 4 points. We shoulda, coulda, woulda won that game. Like, it was, it was within reach. It was Russell Wilson's first regular season starting game.
Yeah,
that's the last time we lost in Arizona to the Cardinals. So I fully expect that trend to continue.
Yeah. Thoughts about Sunday Night Football? You guys, anything new to expect? Anything new to see? I know Ross likes Sunday Night Football because that's like a 4 a.m. game?
9:30 in the morning. I get to actually wake up at a normal time, and it's at a time that I don't have to rewatch the game later to remember it. To be honest, like, if I'm watching the games at 5:30 in the morning, I've stayed up all night to watch the early games as well. Then I watch it, then I go to sleep, and I wake up and I forgot half the game. I have to go watch it again. So the early games, the late night games there are like an early Monday morning for me. I love them because I can watch it at a normal time.
This is one of 5 primetime games we got coming up for the rest of the season.
It's a good year for me.
I think that bodes well for the whole team. Only one 10 a.m. game left too. So
yeah, that's the end of this month against the Saints, right?
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
I don't think we care about the 10 a.m. start anymore, do we?
I care because I don't like to watch football that early.
Well, I mean, like, as far as the team, like, it's not a worrying. That's kind of homegrown era worry now, isn't it?
Yeah,
No,
we've pretty much.
it's just personal preference. But you know what?
Yeah.
Fuck the London games, right? If we're gonna
Jesus.
say screw any game, fuck the London game. A 6 a.m. start. Who wants to watch that? That's terrible.
It's dumb.
If they're gonna play a game in London, I want a game in Tokyo.
All right. Well, we've all kind of alluded to it, so I want to talk about it. It's our last topic for the evening. It's a historical matchup in the desert. So as Zeb said earlier, Seattle has not lost in Arizona against this team since Russell Wilson's first regular season game, where it was a one-score game. In the past 4 years, Seattle has won 4 of them. The past 3 years, Carson Palmer has been the quarterback. In the past 3 games, Seattle's won the last 4, but in the past 3 games, Seahawks have averaged 35 points against this vaunted Arizona defense. This is the same defense. Yeah, they add a player here and there, but it's still Patrick Peterson. It's, still the linebackers. It's still their safeties. It's still Tyrann Mathieu. Calais Campbell is like the newest addition to their defense. But Seahawks have put 35 points on them on average. Carson Palmer has 2 touchdowns in the 2 games that he's played as the starting quarterback in Arizona. Russell Wilson has 8 touchdowns. This is a game that Seattle is made to win because they've historically shown that. It's not indicative that that's what's going to happen, but you kind of have to have the feeling that Seattle is coached so well. It's a primetime game. It is an opportunity for them to you dispel all the things that came up at the end of the Falcons game, and we didn't touch a lot about it. We'll talk about it a little bit later, but the pass interference call that wasn't called on Sherman, it allows them to say, we win this game, we're going to dominate it, here's your new headline. And that's what I'm excited for. Ross, what do you think about the fact that Seattle has just dominated in the desert?
I'm of mixed mind. One is I want to think that Pete Carroll and John Snyder and the coaches have kind of a feel for what they're trying to do down there, and so they're able to game plan effectively. But, so much is also it's kind of random in the NFL. Zeb was talking earlier, like any team could beat any team. And I've never been a fan of people saying, like, well, we beat the Jets by 28 and they lost by this, so that means it doesn't work like that. You as soon as you just go with a game plan that's effective, and as soon as you don't, or some people have a good game when they don't, or they don't. I'm not sure I read a lot into it. I don't think it really indicates anything for this weekend. But again, maybe there's more to it than I'm thinking. I know that's a on the fence answer. I just don't know really what to make of it because they're not a bad team. I think, like I said earlier, I think the coach has a lot of hubris, and I think that always comes back to bite him. I'm a little outraged that he was won a Coach of the Year and Pete Carroll hasn't.
He's won 2.
2, great. He's won 2, awesome. 2, really?
Yeah, he won one in Indy when he took over for Chuck Pagano. Then he became.
That was the cancer year, right?
Yeah, Chuck Pagano had cancer.
I'll give him that one. That's kind of like that's a crappy hand to be dealt. Okay, I'll give him that one. But in Arizona, really, come on, he didn't turn an organization around or anything like that. Anyway, I don't read too much of the history other than the fact that I think Pete Carroll's got some idea of what to expect, and I think he'll be thoroughly ready. I don't think we're gonna have one of our late start type of games. I think we're gonna be ready first quarter and score first drive.
Yeah, Zeb, what's your thoughts about Seattle playing in Arizona and just kind of what you've seen in the past?
I mean, I kind of said most of my feelings on it already, but I like our chances this weekend. I think we play well in the desert historically, and I think that the way these teams match up this year in particular, the advantage goes to us. I would love to see us go in and kind of play them the same way we played the Falcons, blitz them, hit the quarterback, just play physical, tough football, and just try to get them. Don't let them get in any kind of a rhythm, and just smash them, just smash mouth. See if we can knock Carson Palmer out of the game.
I just realized Harold Simon now plays for the Cardinals. What do you think about that?
Yeah, he got picked up for them like right away.
Yeah. I had forgotten that, so I just went over the roster.
Uh,
Daryl Simon's
I think
playing.
if you have Daryl Simon, you line Doug Baldwin up against him, and you have him run curls and slants, and really,
Yeah,
double
right.
move all the time.
Anything like a crossing pattern, anything short that Oh man, wow. That's somebody to pick on.
Yeah, that'll be interesting.
I was really high on Thorold Simon, hoping that he would.
I was like
stick.
president of the fan club.
I think you look at Daryl Simon, you look at his size, you look and say like, hey, this is what Seattle wants. But I think they drafted enough guys behind him to say, look, their upside is better. They can maybe pick it up quicker than he has because he's been in the system long enough, and he just didn't pan out the way they wanted him
Yeah,
to.
but Richard Sherman told us that Thorold Simon was going to be even better than him, and I kind of believed them. Richard wouldn't lie to us.
Right.
Richard,
I think
Richard
Richard's
likes
almost
to talk.
he was almost like a player's coach. He's a player coach almost. He's if you go to the training camps, he spends a lot of time working one on one with the rookies and the new guys coming in, teaching them the Seattle techniques and things.
Yeah.
And he really had a lot to say, and I don't think he was just kind of blowing smoke. I think he really believed it. So maybe Simon just lacks like the mental skills. I'm not calling him like mentally, slow. I'm just saying he doesn't have like a football high IQ.
Yeah, I believe that.
No, I hear you. So let's, we don't have any fan topics, but let's talk about one last thing, because this has been the ongoing story throughout the NFL when it comes to the narrative about the Seahawks, and it was the non-call for the pass interference. I think we are all in consensus that was a penalty that was not called against Richard Sherman. I think you look at what the Falcons tried to do leading up to that fourth down play, and I don't think you as a ref can call a penalty on that because it's essentially a Hail Mary desperation play. Yeah, you've got a minute 30 plus seconds left, but you can't complete anything on first, second, or third down, and now you're throwing like a Hail Mary trying to keep that game going. I think that was desperation. What was that? What you think? Because when you saw that, because I didn't see the replay that actually was a penalty until they showed it in super slow mo.
Yeah, I mean, in slow motion, it's pretty obviously pass interference, but there's also like two or three other things on that play alone that could have been called penalties that weren't called. I think that's just kind of how the refs called that game. They let them play. We had a fairly obvious pass interference against us that wasn't called, maybe two of them even. So, yeah, I mean, when it's at the end of the game like that, that's when it's going to get the news. And people like to be angry about it. And, as Seahawks fans, we've had our fair share of being angry at refs over outcomes of games. So I get it. I understand. I like an officiating team that's going to call the games pretty loose like that. Let the guys play. There's no guarantee that Julio makes that catch if Sherman doesn't have his arm on him like that. So, I don't know. I think people that are angry need to get over it. There's no reason to change rules or anything like that. It seems like anytime we benefit from a questionable call, everybody wants to change the rules. They want to discuss come on, just get over it. It's not that big of a deal. These things happen in every single game.
Yeah, we had two huge playoff games last year where people can't define what a catch is, and we haven't seen any rule changes.
Right. And even the rule change that they're talking about would be to review a pass interference call. But the pass interference call would have to be called in order to be reviewed. So in this particular situation, that rule change wouldn't have made a difference anyway.
Right, because you're trying to argue the merits of was the receiver interfered with, and would you pull the flag back? Not like, oh, hey, on this play, I'm pretty sure you didn't call a penalty, now you need to throw the flag.
Yeah. We're talking about basically a complete overhaul in how games are officiated if we want to start doing stuff like that, where guys upstairs watching monitors with camera angles actually make the calls in order for that to be an effective way to call a penalty or not You know what I mean? Like, if you're going to have guys on the field real time watching this stuff happen, then you have to accept that there's going to be a human element to how these things play out.
Ross.
Well, exactly. If you take it to an extreme, if you have guys, with stop motion cameras and whatnot up in the booth, just calling everything, the game's not playable. I mean, like, there's not a play that doesn't happen. There's not 3 or 4 fouls.
Right.
There's holding literally every play. There's probably hands to the face at least a bit on almost every play. There's, there's so much you could call every play. That's just the nature of football, and you have to kind of decide. You have to decide, I think, on a philosophy of the game. I don't know how that works out. I was listening to Sulk on 7:10 a.m. Seattle earlier last week, and he was talking about the same thing Sammy was talking about. Like, yeah, Sherman's was pass interference, but that's going to be a spot foul, really. Like, you're winning all game long. They Hail Mary, and because of how the rules written, they're going to get the ball there and win the game. Do they deserve to win the game because they throw a Hail Mary on 4th down when they're losing?
Right.
Obviously not. I mean, so if you're going to change it, I mean, you might have to get rid of even the spot foul.
I think that's the one thing that
you introduce. Then you invite a whole bunch of more of it, right? Every time you're going to be beat for something more than 15 yards, interfere.
Yeah.
Right? It becomes really, really difficult to call. I think it's one of the reasons back in the 70s, the 80s, the rules read differently. Like, you were allowed to hit the field. Not blatantly hold them, but you could hit them. You could make contact.
Right.
There was a reason, I think, they're kind of coming across, it's come full circle. They changed the rules to encourage the passing game, but now you're seeing why you needed those rules.
Yeah.
Because now it's ridiculous. You can just change the game on the last play of the game every time by throwing a long bomb and hoping for pass interference. But that's not really what the pass interference is meant for. It's meant for those plays where the guy's kind of streaking on the field would catch it in stride and kind of go in, and you've interfered so you can't catch it. Not for an alley-oop play, and not for a Hail Mary with 6 receivers in the end zone catching the lob.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you write a rule like that. I mean, you have to institute sort of philosophy of officiating.
The one thing I think we're seeing happen more and more is penalties being part of the gamesmanship of the game. Like, people using penalties, especially pass interference. Like, well, if we can't get this first down, let's just try to get a PI.
Yeah.
It's part of the plan in a sense.
Yeah, it's part of the. I mean, the Seahawks were doing a lot of it 2 years ago, maybe it was 3 years ago, where, if you remember, they used to throw a lot of outside fades, but they would intentionally throw them short.
Right. They did that to Tate a lot.
To come back to get it, and if the cornerback hasn't turned his head yet, that's a pass interference every single time.
Yeah.
Boom. Yeah, we're seeing that sort of thing happen in pretty much regular basis.
And I think if you see that,
I think they have to they have to define penalties, but then also define a philosophy of officiating, and that's intangible, obviously, but you can kind of provide context to how you interpret the rules.
and I think that's something that the refs in this game showed, is that they were going to allow them to play a lot. I mean, this was the least penalized game for Seattle. They only had, I think, about 3 flags. None of them were huge offenses. They allowed the team, and to Seattle's credit, that allowed them to really dictate what that game was. And because of that, it played in Seattle's favor. So they allowed both defenses to play in the same mold. They allowed them to both play a really physical game where your play dictated the results. And I think if you're a fan of the Falcons, you're always going to look at this game, especially if it comes down to seeding, especially if it comes down to how it affects your standing at the end of the year, as like a woulda, coulda, shoulda. But at the same time, I think you have to acknowledge that you had a timeout, you had over 1:30 seconds, you had 3 shots before that 4th down play where you didn't get any yardage because Richard Sherman completely blanketed Julio Jones. Julio Jones was covered from the minute. Wherever he lined up, Richard Sherman manned up and played outstanding defense. The only person that Ryan looked to was Mohamed Sanu on 3 complete plays, and one of them was like a throw out of bounds. That's a credit to Seattle's defense, and they forced them to say, well, you know what? You're not willing to try and get the yardage that you can take and try and prolong your game? Well, try and bomb it. And Seattle played it, and Sherman, crafty vet move, interfered with the receiver, was able to get away with it, and Seattle walks away winner. So
Yep.
I would look at it if I could objectively. Yes, that is a pass interference, but you have enough time where that should not be what you're hoping for. You should not be hoping for a Hail Mary play to the middle part of the field to try and keep your winning hopes alive. They abandoned the run. Their running backs were not involved at all. It was basically, we're going to keep going deep. We're going to try and just get chunk yardage. And that was a failure on their end, and I'm glad that they were not rewarded for that, because that would have been huge in my opinion.
Yep. I agree.
All right. Well,
I totally agree.
so here we are. We're at the end. It's time for some predictions. Let's see. We're all pretty confident. Ross maybe not so much because he doesn't believe in history repeating itself. I'm
I
confident.
think they'll win. I just don't think it's necessarily we can expect a blowout type of scoring fiesta.
If they don't have their offensive linemen, like if they're missing Upati again, Seahawks are going to destroy them. I don't care how many people they've got, but they're just going to get stopped. Because Seattle does so well against weak-armed quarterbacks. And I'm sorry, that's what Carson Palmer looks like right now. I don't know if you guys watched that Monday night game. It was a travesty. There were flags left and right. But that entire offense was just David Johnson and a terrible Jets defensive line that just was not interested. And
Yeah. I mean, it sure looked like Carson couldn't throw the ball, but hey, maybe they're just playing possum. Maybe they just didn't want to show their cards for us.
that's a lot of hubris from Arians. If he's trying to say, you know what, I'm gonna slow roll this pocket ace here. Be like, look,
Long con, right?
Yeah.
It could be that. I mean, Carson Palmer just wasn't still right last week, and this week he's got another week to recover.
Right.
Maybe he remembers his birthday now, and he remembers his name and his address, so he's properly concussion free and ready to get a broken leg or something.
Yeah.
I don't think he wants it with us, and I think our defense is going to play strong, and I think our offense is getting better by the week. So I'm going to say good old fashioned 34-13 in the desert.
Yeah. It's pretty solid.
I think I'm gonna go with 28-10.
28-10?
Yeah, I can see 28-10. Maybe 24-10.
I'll take it. I'll take that all day.
I'm going to go 35-17.
Okay.
We're averaging
I think I'm
35
at
points. I think Seahawks are going to start hot. Russell Wilson is... I know he's not getting the touchdowns, and I know that Jimmy Graham isn't finding the red zone. But Russell Wilson, now that he doesn't have his legs, he's playing pretty well from the pocket, as good as I could expect him to play. And if not for a couple drop passes, I think that the Seahawks run away with that Atlanta game, and they don't even get a chance to score a few touchdowns because that offense just would have been gelling. And that's kind of what we saw in the first two quarters. I honestly expect to see that again. But that's just me.
I like it. I'm in.
All right. Zeb sold. Book it. All right. Well, as always, anyone listening live, thank you so much for tuning in. Shout-outs that you guys want to have. Zeb, I'll start you off.
Check out zebdak.com, zebdak.com. That's Momentum Studios. That's the studio I run. If you want to lay down some sick raps or do a poem or a voiceover, you can schedule your time online, zebdak.com. And also check out the Triple B podcast if you want to listen to three jackasses talk about stuff they don't really know about.
Hey, just to be sure, those jackasses have had two back-to-back special guests, so you should check that out.
It's true.
Ross really isn't the shout-outs, but I'm still going to ask.
Well, I was going to say, what Zeb said.
Ross says check out the Triple B podcast as well.
Yeah.
You should look for it. It's awesome. Want to thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you for checking us out on Facebook, checking us out on Seahawks.net, checking us out on SoundCloud. We are going to be here again. We're going to try and make this a weekly thing. So thank you everyone for tuning in. And go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Good luck and Godspeed.